All right. Here we go, guys and gals. And boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, drivers.
Welcome back to the Lucille Show. My name's Andrew Hazlett. That's Ethan Ignatowski, and we're back.
What's up?
For episode number 15 on the air. How about that? Let's get on right into the reviews.
And now for last week's race reviews.
Bristol, Chandler Smith won trucks. Not much else to say there. There's been some controversy surrounding his personal life. We're not going to get into that here. Kyle Larson won Xfinity. If you want to look it up, you can look it up. And Kyle Larson went on Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour, Ethan, and said, "Yeah, I run Xfinity to show how just to give the this wasn't exact words, but to give the Xfinity field a whooping." And that he did, dominating the race, winning the race. So it was interesting to see. Yeah, I just run Xfinity to put them in their place type of thing. That was an interesting type of comment he made. But getting into the main show, everyone was hoping how we would have a tire fall off race like last year. Practice, the tires are getting chewed up. Goodyear sells an extra set of teams. Goodyear and NASCAR say, "Oh, we'll let you guys have another set of tires." However, the race was anything but. The tires did not wear at all. Bowman was on pole. Then Kyle Larson took the lead and won Stage 1. Kyle Larson was first off in the pit stops in Stage 2. Shane Van Gisbergen spun with Cody Ware with some pitting, and Kyle Larson went on to win Stage 2. Kyle Larson was the first off pit road. We had a green flag pit stops. Going long, Ryan Blaney lapped the field on kind of off sequence. That was one of the more interesting things that happened. Kyle Larson wins race 3 out of 10 for me. I think it was easily better than Darlington.
A lot of the internet disagrees. I think that you were harder on Darlington than a lot of other people were.
I agree.
And a lot more favorable on this race than the majority of people.
I agree. I feel the good race poll for Darlington should have been like a 5% yes, and it would wind up being like 30. I believe that, but
it was
might
a
be,
lot closer to 50-50.
I think it was closer, but
40-60 or something.
Somewhere around there. And then I thought Bristol should be like 8 or 9. Yes, wound up being 20. I do feel a lot of Kyle Larson fans voted yes because their driver won. I do feel a lot of people just say no, yes because to be trolls, I guess. I don't know, but I was not at all regardless, these were two races that were not good. And quite frankly, I don't know what the fix is for it. Because
I think it's the cars.
It is the cars, but
so there is no fix until you amend the regulations.
What do you mean by that? Do you want to say get a new generation of car or tweak the current car?
Well, I think that this generation has kind of all around been a failure. Maybe that's a little too harsh, but you can try to, change the regulations. You can change these current regulations, and then if that doesn't work, you can go and try and make a whole different generation of car. But something's got to change, right?
Yeah, the thing is that with this car, NASCAR wanted a car that could take to all 36 races and not change a thing. Good in theory.
Except not really, because you
Because-
need to realize that the 36 tracks that they race at, there is a lot of variation between them. So it really isn't good in theory.
Well, I'm saying good in theory because if you can design a car that is good at all 36 tracks, that would be great.
That just doesn't seem possible.
I agree.
And it's kind of been proven now that it isn't.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, you gotta change. Like I go back to the later days of the Gen 7 when you had, or the Gen 6 rather. We're in the Gen 7 right now. Apologies, but you had different packages for your intermediates and short tracks.
Yeah.
With different horsepower numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Was the racing the best? No, but it was I would say a step better than at least a step better of what we've seen.
Considerably better than
Considerably
the current
better.
Product.
Because I don't know how you if NASCAR is I feel that NASCAR is stuck in their own shoes and they don't want to budge from the concept of, oh, we don't want to.
Well, whenever NASCAR sets in a certain direction, they become very stuck in their ways.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. They just don't want to
every time
change.
Yeah.
This is not just a car. This is a lot of things. Playoffs, how they feel with the cleanliness of racing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With this car, I don't think they want to change the principle.
Obviously not.
I think to get better racing, I don't know what the issue is, but I would like to see a horsepower race. These guys, some of these guys are going. I remember earlier in the year in Las Vegas, they were going flat out at Las Vegas. Las Vegas is not a track that you should be going flat out in. Throw some more horsepower so you can increase the top speed, or make the cornering speed not as high.
Yeah, take away some downforce, I guess, but that kind of brings in like safety concerns. Like you don't want these cars flying even more than they already do now, right?
Yeah, I don't
know how those aerodynamics work, but I assume that wouldn't be a great thing.
And I do applaud NASCAR and Goodyear for trying to mess with the tires to help change.
Yeah.
That
it just hasn't seemed to work.
It's a Band-Aid for.
It's a Band-Aid for
a broken arm.
I was gonna say your arm being cut off, but that works too.
Yeah, it's you can't just run on it. If you're a baseball pitcher, you can't have your arm be duct taped back together the day after you get Tommy John and cleared the throw. That's not how it works.
Nah, just pop some ibuprofen, you'll be good. Trust me.
Like you can't do that. You have to go to the root of the problem and address it from there. And NASCAR has not done that yet.
Yeah.
They're supposedly taking suggestions from drivers, which I know Denny Hamlin's always saying, no, I think we should increase the horsepower. Originally, I think this was they said NASCAR wanted a 500 horsepower package, and I think they're at 650 now. And the 500 horsepower package in testing was way worse than what they're at right now.
Yeah,
which is saying something. Again, another thing is that a lot of people on the internet, including a driver who, by the name of Chase Briscoe, said, "Go back to dirt Bristol."
Yeah, that was at least something like
a novelty.
Different, a novelty. Yeah, it was different enough that it was interesting.
Well, what was covering Bristol in dirt a gimmick?
Yeah, 100%. But it was a great gimmick.
It was a great gimmick that worked. I don't know how you're going to improve it. I'd love to see a dirt race. Would Bristol be my first choice? No. It'd probably be my fourth choice, but after not, I think there's only two or but a handful of tracks that are race ready. Maybe the Chili Bowl. I don't know the logistics.
Imagine NASCAR Cup Series in the Chili Bowl.
Or Knoxville or Eldora. Those are the three that come to my mind. Or you have to get a track that isn't one of those three and put it up to the standard of garages, stands, all that jazz, Ethan. And I don't know if NASCAR would want to do that. I just don't see the return on that sort of investment being there. I don't even know if those first three tracks I mentioned are even at that level, but they're at close enough to that level so they wouldn't have that huge of an issue. With the Knoxville and Eldora, NASCAR Trucks has raced there not too long ago.
Yeah.
So that's not that far off of where you need to be. So at the end of the day, you got to take some risks, NASCAR, which they are doing with the tires, but you got to keep going.
Keep it coming and taking steps upwards.
So that I think that's all we have to say about Bristol. Moving to Long Beach, Kyle Kirk was on pole. We had so it was a 3-stop race, and the alternate Guale tire was not a tire to run it. Everyone only ran it once. So most of the field was get it out of the way first stint. And there were a few drivers who didn't, namely Christian Rasmussen. That's the guy we're going to focus. And then we'll talk about a few more later who had career runs. But Kirkwood was on pole, green flag stop. Rasmussen was on the alternate strategy. Started, I believe, 11th and was up after the first run 7 spots. And then you might say, okay, he's going to fall back a bit on the new worst tire compared to these guys that are on the better tire. He wound up didn't having that issue. On the next round of green flag pit stops, he stayed where he was. So that was interesting with that. And then after the second round of stops, Stingray Robb and the 8 car, I believe, of Cayman Islands guy, Kiffin Simpson, they were on the alternate strategy of let's run the greens at the third stop of your 4 runs. And it wound up working for them because Stingray Robb had tied his career best of 9th, and Kiffin Simpson set his career best of 10th. So those two had great runs. I know Robert Schwartzman was on the same strategy. Didn't work out as well for him. Maybe the best strategy was that strategy that Stingray Robb ran. So that was an interesting kind of to see throughout the race. A couple other interesting things. Joseph Newgarden had an issue with a seatbelt, so that cost him multiple laps, and that is huge for his championship hopes because Alex Palou has gone first, second in the first 3 races. Pretty good. Scoring 142 points per race. Joseph Newgarden has gone 3rd, 13th, 27th. Ethan, that is good enough for 58 points. Newgarden is supposed to be one of those guys who should be fighting for the championship, but he's not up there. And a huge loss like that, because he was probably going to finish top 5-ish. That's and finishing 27th. That's
still
a loss
early in the season.
A loss of 25 points.
Yeah, it's still early
when a guy
in the season,
who is perfect as Palou is, and what he's shown to be, 25 points. That's a 25 points that you can't lose there if you want to get to a championship. I feel like
it's race 3. Like you're not necessarily wrong, but you can't be thinking like that after race number 3. Anything can happen. Someone could crash Pillow out a race or two. His car could just break a race or two. Like, there's multiple pathways to it being extremely far from over. It's not crazy only because Pillow is so dominant, but having this conversation after race 3, it's kind of crazy. In my opinion.
I'm just saying is that the 20.5 points now could come back. In the future.
It very well could. That is 100% true.
Because race 1, Scott McLaughlin has that push to pass issue. He doesn't have that. He wins the championship. I don't know if he wins it, but he comes very close regardless.
Yeah.
You have to in a
you do need to maximize every single outing, correct?
Yes, in an era where you've got 17 races, Ethan.
Yeah.
And a guy who is not in Pillow, who's fast and not mistake prone. You can't have those issues. And that's what derailed Will Power's championship run last year. Granted, he was a long shot to beat Pillow, but Pillow would have had to have those. So there's some significant issues, but Power did. So once Power did, he was out of it.
Yeah.
So it's Pillow. You gotta take advantage of every outing, and Team Penske as a whole right now hasn't done that. All 3 of their drivers have had to finish worse than 26th this year. That's 5 points around where Pillow's lowest, the point total has been 40 that he's collected in a race. I know it's still early, but that's at the end. When we're sitting here in September, we might be talking about this. How Pillow, his bad days weren't as bad as some of the other guys' bad days. So that's kind of the point I'm trying to drive here. Moving forward with the race, I had a final round of green flag pit stops, and the podium wound up being Kirkwood, Pillow, and Christian Lundgaard, who worked that alternate strategy well. I would give this race a 5 out of 10. Not much really on track action, but the strategy was was a very interesting strategy race. You had, like, if one were to just kind of casually have this on the background, it wouldn't be interesting. But with the strategy, it made it interesting. Say, okay, how high are these guys going to jump up? Like Lundgaard and Stingray Robb that I've mentioned. So I give it a 5 out of 10. So, but Ethan, there was a beef post-race between Devlin DeFrancesco and another driver for a second race in a row. This time it was Felix Rosenqvist. Why they're beefing, no one really knows. They haven't really gone after it social media. IndyCar just said, "Oh yeah, these guys are beefing." Posted the video of post-race on the cool-down lap. Rosenqvist unhappy with DeFrancesco and going over to his box to talk to him, but no one knows why he's mad. So IndyCar, just as a whole, Fox for the production, I don't even know if they showed it post race, gets the chicken award because why do we have beef? So that is the chicken award. Only one squeeze today because it's not that bad of an offense. But still an offense enough to get the chicken award. Ethan.
Yes.
It's time for Bahrain. What do you have for me?
Yeah, 4th race of the Formula One season, and we got our first 2-time winner of the year. Let me tell you how it happened, Andrew. So you have Oscar Piastri starting on pole, and he had a really great start. George Russell did try to give him a look around the outside of turn 1, but he couldn't get a move to stick. Now, Lando Norris, who started all the way down in P6, he flew up the grid. He made it to up to P3 by the exit of turn 4. However, Andrew, he was outside of his grid box at the start, ever so slightly, but it doesn't matter. If you're outside, you get a penalty. 5-second penalty to Lando Norris, which he served at his first pit stop. Now, there were some people debating whether it should have been a 10-second or a 5-second penalty. I don't really know, because in the past, it's been a 5-second, and in the past, it's been a 10-second. I don't know where they draw the line. It's just an instance of inconsistency with penalties, as per usual. Let's not pretend otherwise. So that was a thing that happened. On lap 5, the Williams, I want to say, like, both of them, especially Alex, though, great start to the year. But both of them here on lap 5. Well, not unlucky start for Carlos. Really good start of the year for Alex. Both of the Williams, though, on lap 5 got passed, which was kind of funny. Max made a nice move around the outside of Carlos, and Kimi made a dive down the inside of Albon. Just a lot of early fighting in this early stage. Lewis was making passes, had a real nice pass on Carlos right before turn 4 for 8th, but then Carlos fought back, and the battle kept on going all the way through to turn 11 before Lewis finally got the move to stick. Yuki Tsunoda was able to follow Lewis through as well, so Carlos lost 2 places there. Lap later, saw another battle lasting multiple corners between Kimi Antonelli and Pierre Gasly, and just a lot of action in the early stages of the race. Between laps 10 and lap 24, a lot of the main players started to come in for their first pit stops. It was a 2-stop race for a lot of guys, swapping softs for mediums at this first pit stop. Lando came in, he served his penalty. The Ferrari duo, of course, had to stay out a little bit longer, as this team has really liked to do early this season, and once again didn't really work out in their favor. So drivers continued making pit stops, making moves, saw action, and then on lap 25 we finally saw something of like major significance. So on lap 24, Leclerc got himself into the DRS of Lando as Lando was trying to pass George for second. After serving that penalty, he came out in a position, was still able to get up to George, try to battle him for P2. But he nearly got passed down the inside of turn 1. However, Leclerc went too deep, but he was able to slot back in behind Lando. And a lap later, on lap 25, down the first straight, he made the move stick. And then just kind of soared off into the distance. Lando, for whatever reason, wasn't really able to keep up with him. Couple laps later, 5 laps later, lap 30, Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz made contact between turn 1 and turn 2. To me, it looked like more of more so Yuki's fault, just kind of racing incident, but Yuki, he had his rear get loose, and his like back tire hit Carlos's side pod, caused significant damage, and just his side pod was destroyed, and it left debris on the track. Apparently they were on the racing line. We never really got a camera shot of it, but they brought out a safety car on lap 32 for debris, so could have only been for that. After the safety car, Andrew, at the restart, the top 10 was Piastri, Russell, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, Gasly, Ocon, Verstappen, Doohan, and Sainz. Sainz would start to drop down the field because of that damage, but when the field did go green, Lando started putting pressure on Leclerc for P3. He tried to go down the inside of turn 1, but Leclerc blocked him off really well, and it was to the extent, Andrew, that Lewis was able to go around the outside of him and take that spot. Now, Lando was able to pass him back around the outside of turn 4, the exit of turn 4, but he went wide and he had to give the position back. Another just marginal mistake, but a costly one for Lando Norris. A few laps later, that was on lap 36, now on lap 38, Lando was able to make a move stick around the outside of turn 4, this time crucially illegally, and he would go on driving down the field. This time he was able to catch up to Leclerc, but it took him a while. Between those two stages, Sainz, he did retire, and we saw some more battling. Both Haas's were in the top 10 at this point, so great drives from both of those guys. On lap 52, Lando finally got close enough to Leclerc, making a move around the outside of turn 4 at the exit stick. Once again, it was Lando was that was his spot, right? And so on lap 57, the last lap of the race, when he finally got up to George to try and pass him for P2, I personally thought that he was going to follow George closely through the turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 section, race down to 4, where he had a lot of success passing in this race, battling in this race. But instead, I don't know if he just felt the pressure to try to get the move done early. He tried to go around the outside of turn 1. Russell fended him off, and Norris wasn't able to slot back in effectively based off of how he tried to make the move work and how Russell was able to defend him off. So he didn't have a shot at passing him in turn 4. So Russell was able to finish ahead of Lando. Max Verstappen, though, he did make a nice last lap pass around Pierre Gasly outside of turn 4 for P6. And then, guy who I didn't even mention since the start, Oscar Piastri, he took the checkered flag. Just a dominant weekend for him. He was an absolute machine in the clean air, in qualifying, in the race. He just drove off into the distance. I bet the race was pretty boring for him, but I'm sure he won't complain. So it was Piastri, Russell, Norris, Leclerc. It was just on Norris. Just what a weird race for him. Good, not good, struggled, ended up getting P3, maybe felt like he should have gotten P2. Very weird race for him. I don't even know how to put it into words. Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen, Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda, and Behrman finish out your top 5, or your top 10 though, excuse me. So both the Haas's got in there. Yuki got points in the Red Bull. And, I'll say it, I was kind of clowning you a little bit for talking about the IndyCar Championship after Race 3, but I'm going to talk about the F1 Championship after Race 4, so I'm not any better. Lando, he leads the championship right now, 77-74, but all the momentum in the world is on Piastri's side. And apart from two costly, but in the grand scheme of things, just 2 mistakes, Oscar has been the better driver this year. There's absolutely no question that McLaren is the fastest car on the grid, but there's also absolutely no question that it suits Oscar, or it suits Oscar more because Oscar's the one that's having a much better time of it. He's been able to connect with the car in a way that Lando hasn't. We've heard Lando come out and say the car is the fastest. People want to pretend like he's not saying that. He's saying that in interviews. He's not denying it. But he's also saying that the car isn't suiting him, and that's why he's struggling. If we're going to say that that's fair for Max to say, that's fair for Lando to say. Obviously, the McLaren has more pace. Obviously, Lando should be, he should have had a much more dominant performance, even if it was a P2. He should have had a much more dominant performance in Bahrain than he ended up having. But the car isn't suiting him. That's just the way it is. That's its own separate thing. But we can admit that. We can say he's struggling because it's an issue of comfort rather than Lando has all of the sudden forgotten how to drive. because you don't do what he did in the McLarens that were midfield cars if you're a bad driver. It's that simple. To me, it is that simple. Others, not that simple. But I'm the one with a microphone in front of me talking, which means I'm right and you're wrong.
Just gonna say that on the haters anyway.
Yeah. But I'm using logic in my argument, whereas Twitter is just going off vibes or whatever. I don't know.
All right. Into the news, and there is some news to talk
There's
about.
a lot of news to talk about.
And now for the news.
Katherine Legge announces plans to run more NASCAR events. In Xfinity Series, she's going to do 7 races in the Jordan Anderson 32, starting at North Wilkesboro. Charlotte was also now. They've announced the full schedule, but including the first 2 races. The next 2 races, rather. Actually, that's not true. I don't know how time works, apparently. But 7 races in total in that Xfinity car. And in the Cup car, she's going to do 5 races. The first of them being Mexico for B.J. McLeod. So that's going to be interesting to watch. I do think she'll obviously improve. Plopping her on an oval that's a one-in-a-kind oval is in your first start isn't the best place to do so, especially with her road racing background. We'll see how she'll do. I expect improvements. That's really all you can expect.
Yeah.
I hope she proves some people wrong on Twitter. And yeah.
Me too.
Other piece of news.
Big takeaway from this last 3-ish minutes of the show. People on Twitter need to be proven wrong a lot more. Just needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It would make the world a better place.
Here's an interesting one, and piece of news right here. Legacy Motor Club granted a restraining order against Rick Ware Racing. Rick Ware Racing cannot sell, lease, or take any other action regarding the charter until Sunday or an agreement is made. And this was originally when this came out was 10 days where they couldn't do anything. I don't really know what 10 days is going to do for a race team if you're trying to sell it or lease a charter. Like, in the grand scheme of things, that's not that much, but it's very interesting development. Here's Andrew can do some speculation. You cannot lease the same charter twice in a certain, I think it's 5-year span, Ethan. Mm-hmm. Rick Ware Racing, I think this is the final year of that time period. I could be wrong, but regardless, they own 2 charters, leasing one to RFK right now. If that resets, they could release that same charter to RFK next year. Or if it does not reset, they can lease their current charter that Cody Ware is using to that team and then run the other charter. That could happen. And as the other thing that could possibly happen is the 2 teams could enter an agreement, a long-term agreement to run that charter together. You saw it in the past with Rick Ware Racing teaming up with Legacy Motor Club, but they were at that point were called Richard Petty Motorsports and ran the 51. Rick Ware Racing was leasing it, was the receiving end on that charter from Richard Petty, and they ran it as quote-unquote Petty Ware Racing as a Rick Ware Racing entry, but the charter coming from Petty. Yeah. So those 2 things could happen, or they could just sell that third charter as a whole. That second charter. I don't know why I said third charter. They could sell that charter to anyone they wanted to. I just don't think that 10 days is really going to affect things because months and months of talk can do things. If this Legacy were to get an extend on this temporary restraining order, that could do some, I don't want to say damage, but that could hinder discussions. So I don't know what they're trying to do here with this 10-day thing, unless there was an agreement close to being made from Rick Ware Racing. Apparently Rick Ware thought they were selling the charter after next year, when Legacy thought it was going to be this year.
Okay.
So this is what the mix-up happened. And then I do want to talk about something else that's not on the document because...
Yeah, I just want to say this, though.
Go ahead.
Was anyone aware that teams could file restraining orders against each other? I didn't know that was a thing that was, like, legally possible.
Well, yeah, I didn't know that either. And so people were joking on the internet, whenever a car comes in with, whenever Rick Ware car gets within 500 feet of a Legacy car, they have to back off.
Yeah, like...
So it's not that type of restraining order.
No, I understand, but...
Also, last Monday, this is the NASCAR 2311 lawsuit. 2311 and Front Row Motorsports filed a motion with the U.S. District Court of Colorado seeking to compel Liberty Media, the F1 owner, to comply with a subpoena, which will help calculate damages in the antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR using the yardstick method. And also, Liberty Media is not the only league 2311 have gone to court to try to enforce subpoenas for financial information on percentage of teams' revenues get. On March 31st, this is from Bob. The first report was from Toby Christie. On March 31st, 2311 and FRM filed a motion in the U.S. District Court in NYC to compel the NFL, NBA, and NHL to comply with subpoenas. Interesting that the MLB was not mentioned, but I don't know if that really means anything, just because you got 3 of the big 4. I don't know why you aren't trying to get the 4 of the big 4, but...
Wait, sorry. With who? Between the MLB and who, or the 4 and...
The 2 NASCAR teams, 2311 and Front Row, are trying to enforce... are going to court to enforce subpoenas for financial information on percentage of the teams that revenues get. They have filed motion in the U.S. District Court in New York City to compel the NHL, NBA, and the NFL, NBA, and NHL, so professional football, basketball, and hockey, to comply with the subpoenas. And also, they have filed a similar motion in the U.S. District of Colorado to compel Liberty Media to do the exact same thing.
Okay, so F1. And 3 of the big 4.
So it's kind of interesting how they aren't going for MLB. We'll see.
I don't even know what any of this means. Like, I barely know what any of this stuff means legally. So I don't know. This show is not legal advice.
Yeah, we are not lawyers. We're just journalists. 2 different things. But regardless, it's kind of interesting. It's like, I guess they're trying to do some compare and contrast method here to say, oh, these people are making what they want to see is the F1 teams, not MLB teams, NHL teams, and so on and so forth. They make this percentage of money, which is less than we NASCAR teams get. We want to make that same percentage.
Yeah.
No, I don't think they know what the numbers are, so they want to get a compare and contrast.
Well,
I think
MJ probably knows for the NBA.
MJ does probably know from the NBA, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's some sort of connections to some people within other groups, because Denny Hamlin drives for Joe Gibbs Racing, car owned by which is co-owned by Washington Commanders owner Josh Harris as well. So it's kind of a similar thing. They probably know some of those numbers and have a good idea where they are. So that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to come of this. It'll be interesting to see. They might know what they're doing.
Yep. Not a whole lot of substance with these pieces of F1 news, but there are a few bullet points to get through, so I'll try to do it quickly. First up, Jack Doohan's job is safe for now. There was a lot of talk, a lot of rumors about like, oh, he's going to be replaced after like 5 races. Oh, he's going to be replaced after like 6 races. Well, his lease on life has apparently been extended at least till like the mid-season point throughout the summer. That's what people are reporting out of the paddock. He's had a bit of an interesting start to his first full season of Formula One. I mean, some good results in there. Bahrain was good for him, and a good bounce back from, a weekend in Tokyo, or not in Tokyo, but in Japan at Suzuka, where he made a really silly mistake. So it's been a weird 4 races, but like it's a rookie through 4 races. Like you can't take too much away from that, but they are showing that they have confidence in him, which I like to see. We talked about, Andrew, how he deserves, if you're going to give him a shot, give him a shot. He deserves a shot if you're going to give him a shot. And it seems like he's going to get that, so good for him. Another piece of news, I read a motorsport.com article, but everyone is talking about this. Word around the paddock is George Russell is nearing a 2-year extension worth around $30 million per season with Mercedes, and that contract is expected to include an option for 2028. Now, there's no word on if that is on the driver's side or on the team side. So we'll see. We'll see. It's definitely deserving that George signs this contract. Like, in my opinion, he has been maybe even the second best driver this year ahead of Lando. He's been Mr. Consistency. He's just done a very, very good job finding his way onto the podium in multiple races, finding his way in the top 5. He's proven he can be a team leader. He's doing a great job of it. All that being said, and I'll get more into it later, like all the talk about Max and could he leave Red Bull, Toto Wolff has been rumored to want Max in Mercedes for a long, long time, but now you're essentially on the verge of locking up your 2 drivers for a while, because Kimi is the future of that team and George is the present and seemingly also the future of that team. So I like the move for Mercedes. You can't really wait around to see if something's going to happen. You need to be proactive. And I like that they're extending George. He deserves it. Now, about Max. Helmut Marko was seen having, let's say, a very strong conversation after the Bahrain Grand Prix with Max Verstappen's manager. They talked about it on Sky Sports, I believe. Ted Kravitz saw it happen live and in person. And then afterwards, Marko admitted that, he's concerned about Max's future, and he's not happy with the team's performance. And, it's no secret that there is a clause in Max's contract that if he finishes, I believe it's either 3rd or 4th, if he finishes below that point in the Drivers' Championship, he has an option to leave the contract, leave the team. And Mercedes was one of the top teams, along with Aston Martin, that he was that his name has kind of been tied to. Now, all of that is like, it's not like the absolute peak of rumors, but it's pretty close. It's not the Mount Everest, but it's the Mount K2 of rumors. don't know what I'm talking about. But no, I like that analogy. I'm gonna keep that. It is like, it's such a crazy rumor that Max could leave Red Bull that you almost don't think it could happen. But if they're struggling, like, why not? If they can't give him a car that he thinks he can win in, why not? Now, the only thing that I can say to, like, counter that own argument that I'm making is you're about to have the new regulations, right? There is as good of a reason as any that Red Bull could give him a race-winning and championship-winning car when the new regulations are implemented and all 11 teams rock up compliant to those new regulations next year. But it is an interesting story to keep our eyes on, Andrew, because this is about as real as it's ever been, with Max potentially leaving. And, you know, there have been flare-ups, multiple different things over Max's tenure at Red Bull, but it's starting to feel, maybe it's just because we're hearing it so often, but it's starting to feel a little more real.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's even close to happening, but, you know, you just wouldn't be surprised if things are on that track right now. Now, Andrew, you often call the Sauber, Steak, Audi mess Saudi for Saudi, or Sauber and Audi. Well, what if I told you that we might actually get a Saudi on the grid? The president, I believe his official title is, of let me see. He's the chairman of Saudi Arabia's Automobile and Motorcycle Federation. His name is, excuse me for, I'm about to butcher it, but it's Khalid bin Sultan Al Abdullah Al Faisal.
We'll call him Ben Al.
No, we're not calling him that. I'll call him Khalid. That's his first name. So Khalid was saying that he would really like to see a Saudi team on the grid. And he said that he wouldn't be surprised if we see an announcement for a Saudi team. That tells me that things might be starting in the background with, you know, working towards driving to that goal. I just thought it was interesting. There's like absolutely nothing there. But I thought I would bring it up more so just because I think it's funny that you call a team Saudi and we might get a Saudi team on the grid. Now, something actually like big and newsworthy relating to Saudi Arabia is that, Andrew, we know that there's been talk about a purpose-built circuit in I think the city is pronounced Qiddiya, and the Jeddah race would seemingly like cease to exist, and they would go to that track, and that was supposed to start in, I think it was originally supposed to start in 2027, but now according to the race, that could be pushed back to 2029, meaning that Formula One would race on the Jeddah track until at least 2029. But if you see on the doc, Andrew, I say possibly beyond, because that's the race is in the article. They're basically saying that we could see 2 races in Saudi Arabia. And I'm telling you this news on the same day that Stefano Domenicali has come out and said that, you know, it might no longer be feasible to have like 2 races in Italy with, you know, racing at Monza and, you know, racing at Imola. So 2 amazing, historical, great F1 racetracks. You know, why have those when you can have 2 races in Saudi Arabia? And
I do want to point out real quick.
Yeah.
When this was announced, and I believe whenever it was announced, they said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have Jeddah for 2 years."
Yeah.
And now for next week's race previews.
To 2023 and then 2024 race at Qiddiya.
It was
I,
okay.
I don't know if they're ever gonna build this Qiddiya track at this point.
I think it's being worked on right now, but just look, not only have we already talked about it and multiple other people have talked about it, and just don't want to get into the politics of all that on the show, but it's just the whole situation, Andrew. It's pretty crazy to me. That's what I gotta say about that. But previews, keeping with the Saudi Arabia theme, Formula One is going to Saudi Arabia. That's about that. We'll see who's fast there.
F2 is there as well.
Yeah, F2 is there as well. No F3 though, and then no NASCAR Cup Series this weekend, but both the Xfinity Series and Truck Series are going to Rockingham.
Yeah,
Andrew, first time in a minute.
Yeah, the return of the Rockingham. I should have actually. That's what I'm doing now. Is see when the last race at Rockingham was.
It's like 2013.
That sounds about right. When ARCA team owner Andy Hillenberg owned the track. Let's see. The most recent Cup race there was in 2004. Xfinity 2004 as well. Jamie McMurray won the most recent 4 races there. Shout out that. And then there were 2 truck races there in 2012 and 2013. Those are only 2 truck races ever, where Casey Kane and Kyle Larson were your winners. So yeah, there's no other than Casey Kane, who's making a return. There's no former winner in the field, period, this week.
And I mean, this is Casey Kane's first time behind. First off, though, Casey Kane Friday, racing on a Saturday, but this is Casey Kane's first time on the grid in like multiple years. Like, really cool that he's returning, but I don't think that it's fair to expect much, just considering how long he's been outside of a NASCAR race car.
Yeah, his most recent start was in 2018. He's been doing dirt racing, but he hasn't been in a stock car in a while. He is for the drivers changing. He is one driving the 33 for Richard Childress Racing. Patrick Emmerling in the 07 for SS Greenlight. Justin Bonsignor in the 19 for Gibbs. Jordan Anderson Racing is bringing 4 cars this week instead of its usual 2 or 3. Catherine Legg in the 32, as we mentioned. Austin Green in the 87. Greg Van Alst and driver TBA are in Joey Gase's cars, 35 and 53 respectively. Vincente Salas is in the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing, their third entry. Thomas Nunziata in the third, or the early only car for Cope Family Racing. Dawson Crampback in the 74 for Mike Harmon. Josh Bilicki in the 91 for DGM. Truck Series, Brand Jones in the number 1 for Tricon. Rayom Brothers bringing Cody Dennison in the 22, Stephen Malazzi in the 2, Norm Benning in the 6, Aspire Motorsports, Sammy Smith in the 07, Corey Day in the 7, Bailey Curry in the 44, Timmy Hill in the 56 for his own team, Luke Fenhouse in the 66 for Thor Sport, 75 for Henderson, Parker Kligerman, and Justin Carroll for his family team. Moving into pick points quick.
Yeah.
And now for next week's race picks.
Well, we don't really have time to go over last week's stuff.
I took the most.
Yeah, Andrew took a big chunk. There's a 10-point gap between us now.
And the guests 9.
If you want to see how things went exactly, if you care enough, go back and listen to it and match it up. But we know you don't care. So going into this week, Leonardo Fornaroli, Andrew, you're taking in for both the sprint and the main race, and I'm taking Pepe Marti for both the sprint and the race, so a little bit of a swap for us. I just wanted to do that to be funny, honestly. I really like the Alex Dunn pick from whoever our guest is.
Zach.
Luke Browning is his pick for the main race. And then the podium, we are sharing our first 2 guys. You have Oscar Lando. Regrettably, not even regrettably, I am putting Oscar in front of Lando. And until he proves me otherwise.
That's fair.
I have Russell third. You have Leclerc third.
Well, here's the thing, real quick. When we don't pick Russell to finish on the podium as a collaborative effort between me, you, and the guest, he finishes on the podium. Whenever someone picks him to finish on the podium, he doesn't finish on the podium. So that's why I said, I know one of you two is gonna pick Russell, and you both did. So I'm like, we'll put Charles Leclerc there as a third.
So we have a jinx going. Okay, we'll see how the jinx goes this weekend. Guest is taking same guys as I'm taking, but he has Lando, Oscar, and then George. For the Truck Series, Andrew and the guest going with Corey Heim. I'm going with Chandler Smith, mostly just because I realized that me and Andrew have a lot of similarities, and I want to keep it at least somewhat interesting. For an example of the similarity is everyone's picking Justin Allgaier. He had a test there not too long ago, so I guess gives him a bit of an advantage.
I feel he's already the best guy in this type of track. It is Phoenix. He's really well. That's kind of something you can compare it to. Like I looked at the entry list again right during the episode. I'm like, oh, I want to be different. Yeah. Couldn't bring myself.
I
to
wanted
pick
to pick
else.
like Casey Kane or something, but just like that's genuinely not a good pick because it's been so long in this type of car. So that's that. We'll be back next Tuesday at 9:30 again, like always. But for now, Andrew, it's been an hour. We got to get out of here.
Yeah. Goodbye, everyone. I'm Andrew Hazlett. That's Ethan Igtowski. Goodbye.
To me, it looked like he actually lost the wheel.
The wheel for Ross Chastain is still and perfect.
Wheel on the track.
Did you leave the wheel loose?
You picked the fine time to leave me loose, wheel.